You wake up, and before your feet even touch the ground, it starts. The voice in your head. But what if I told you that voice isn't you? And the moment you stop believing it, everything changes. Every single day, that voice narrates your life, replaying past mistakes, predicting future problems, and convincing you that you are your thoughts. You've been told that controlling or changing these thoughts is the key to happiness. But what if the real secret isn't thinking differently, but thinking less? Imagine a world where your mind isn't a constant battleground, where silence replaces the noise and clarity replaces the confusion. That world isn't just possible, it's waiting for you. Now let's break free. The prison of internal dialogue. This realization can be unsettling at first. We've been taught that our thoughts define us, that they're the essence of our being. Every self-improvement guide seems to echo this belief. Transform your thoughts to transform your life. But what if the real issue isn't the content of your thoughts, but rather the very act of this endless internal conversation? The voice you've mistaken for your authentic self isn't a wise guide or trusted advisor. It's a constraint not formed of physical barriers, but of endless mental constructions. Its walls are built from judgments, anxieties, grievances, and endless comparisons. Picture yourself beside a pristine mountain lake, its surface perfectly mirroring the vast sky above. Drop a single stone into those waters, and the reflection shatters into countless ripples. Your mind's constant chatter is like that stone, perpetually disturbing the natural clarity of your consciousness. Your mind resembles a cup that's already full to the brim, so consumed with its own narrative, its compulsion to categorize and interpret every experience, it leaves no room for fresh insights, not for joy, not for clarity, not for the serenity you seek. Eckhart Tolle describes this as the pain body, a collection of negative emotional patterns and internalized stories. When you replay conflicts in your mind, envision worst-case scenarios, or engage in harsh self-criticism, this pain body grows stronger, creating a phantom self that exists in a state of perpetual anxiety and discontent. This false self feels incredibly real, doesn't it? So real that you might mistake it for your true essence. But consider this. If you are truly one with this voice, who is it that observes it speaking? Take a moment to contemplate that. Who witnesses these thoughts? In that space between thoughts, you might glimpse something remarkable. A quiet, watchful presence. Something more fundamental than thought, more peaceful than words, and infinitely more stable than mental chatter. This presence is your authentic self. Hindu philosophy refers to this presence as the Atman, the eternal self that exists beyond material fluctuations. Christian mysticism describes it as the still small voice of God, ever present beneath our mental noise. In Taoism, it's the way that flows naturally, without the interference of thought. The mind resists this understanding because it's attached to its own activity. It seeks to analyze, categorize, and control everything. But the mind's nature is inherently unstable, swinging between past and future, hope and fear, never truly resting in the present moment. This instability is the root of our suffering. When caught in this mental turbulence, even minor irritations become major ordeals. Traffic transforms into a story about disrespect and wasted time. A glance at social media becomes a narrative of comparison and inadequacy. But it's not the situations themselves causing your distress. It's your thoughts about them. A Course in Miracles states it clearly. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Your thoughts about reality are not reality itself. They're projections, like shadows on the wall of Plato's cave. You can't perceive the light while fixating on shadows. Here's the revelation. The moment you cease your internal dialogue, even briefly, transformation begins. You taste freedom. You step beyond the prison of endless mental chatter into a vast field of pure awareness. This isn't about forcefully silencing your mind. That only makes it louder. Instead, it's about becoming aware of the voice without identifying with it. It's about listening to the lake rather than throwing more stones into it. As Rumi said, silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. When you release the internal dialogue, you begin to hear that silence. It's not an absence, it's a fullness, a peace that surpasses understanding. You might encounter resistance as you practice this awareness. The voice will insist you need it for survival, for planning, for solving problems. But the deeper presence within you knows how to live without the constant noise, just as the sun needs no instructions to rise. As you sit with this truth, allow yourself to wonder, who am I beyond the voice? Who am I when the mind grows still? These questions aren't meant to be answered intellectually. They're meant to be lived, to be explored in the silence that lies just beyond the noise. When you look into a still mirror, you see yourself exactly as you are. No distortion, no embellishment. The clarity is absolute. But what happens when the mirror cracks? The fractured reflection. Your reflection becomes fragmented, distorted, an imperfect echo of reality. This is what your internal dialogue does to your self-perception. It's a broken mirror showing you warped versions of yourself. It whispers that you're inadequate, that you must prove your worth, that disaster looms if you don't maintain constant vigilance. Think back to your childhood. Can you remember moments of pure presence, running through grass, creating with crayons, or laughing until your sides hurt? In those moments, you weren't narrating your experience. You simply were. That's the state of being your true self yearns to reclaim. Simplicity, presence, and natural flow. In Buddhism, this state is called sati, or mindfulness, the art of being fully present without judgment or commentary. When the Buddha achieved enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree, he didn't argue with his thoughts. He simply observed them, allowing them to pass like clouds across the sky. In today's world, silence seems impossible. Notifications buzz, emails flood in, and the world demands constant attention. Even in moments of quiet, the inner voice often intensifies, filling the void with its chatter. You might be tempted to give up, to believe that true stillness is unreachable. But here's the truth. The more chaotic your mind, the more deeply it craves silence. This yearning for silence isn't new. Millennia ago, Lao Tzu asked, "Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself?" These ancient words hold profound wisdom. The more you chase clarity, the more elusive it becomes. True stillness emerges when you stop pursuing, stop controlling, and simply allow yourself to be. Consider the story of a seeker who approached a Zen master eager to learn the secret of enlightenment. The master instructed him to sit by a river and listen. After hours of hearing only flowing water, the man expressed his frustration. The master smiled and replied, "When you stop seeking meaning, you'll hear everything." This story points to a fundamental truth. Stillness isn't something to achieve, it's something to remember. It's already within you, waiting beneath the noise. But how do you access stillness when the internal dialogue refuses to quiet? Begin by observing the voice without engaging it. Imagine sitting in a theatre, watching thoughts play out on the screen. You're the audience, not the actor. The same applies to your thoughts. They appear in consciousness, but they aren't you. This practice might initially feel uncomfortable. The voice might grow louder, trying to pull you back into its narrative. It might insist this is pointless, that you're wasting time, that peace is impossible. Don't resist. Fighting the voice only empowers it. Instead, gently remind yourself that you are the witness, not the thoughts you witness. In Christian contemplative tradition, this practice is called centering prayer, a silent communion where words fall away and only presence remains. Mystics speak of finding the peace that passes understanding, a serenity that arises not from thinking, but from surrendering the need to think. Remember, you don't need to master this overnight. Even a single moment of silence, a breath, a heartbeat, a pause, can begin to loosen the chains of mental chatter. Picture holding a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring, the water remains clouded. But set it down, let it be still, and the sediment naturally settles, leaving the water clear. Your mind works the same way. The more you struggle against thoughts, the more turbulent they become. But when you allow them to be, clarity emerges naturally. This is where transformation happens. In Hindu philosophy, there's a beautiful metaphor of the lotus flower. The lotus grows in murky water, yet its petals remain immaculate, untouched by the mud. Your true self is like the lotus, unsullied by the noise of thought, no matter how chaotic it may seem. When you stop identifying with the internal dialogue, you begin to experience this purity. You see the world as it is, not as the voice interprets it. A tree isn't beautiful or ugly, it simply is. A moment isn't good or bad, it's simply now. This shift doesn't mean thoughts cease altogether. Thoughts will arise, just as clouds pass through the sky. But instead of clinging to them, you let them move through. You stop mistaking them for reality. Initially, this might feel like stepping into unknown territory. The voice has been your constant companion for so long that its absence might feel disorienting. But as the silence deepens, you'll discover something extraordinary. You'll find that stillness isn't empty, but full. Full of peace, full of presence, full of life. As you rest in that stillness, you'll begin to see yourself clearly for the first time. Not as the fractured reflection of the voice, but as the unwavering presence behind it. This is the beginning of freedom, the first step beyond the cage. In the silence, you'll realize that transformation isn't something that happens to you. It's something that has always been waiting for you, the voice and the void. There comes a profound moment in everyone's spiritual journey when they realize the voice in their head has been an unwelcome tenant, consuming energy and creating discord. It's like discovering an uninvited guest who has been rearranging your furniture and dictating your choices. You pause and wonder, why have I allowed this for so long? This is the beginning of what some traditions call the void, the space where the voice no longer dominates. For many, the idea of this void seems frightening. If you're not the voice in your head, who are you? What remains when the chatter ceases? But what if the void isn't empty at all? What if it's overflowing with everything you've been seeking? In Taoist philosophy, the void isn't a barren nothingness, but the womb of infinite possibility. The Tao Te Ching teaches, we shape clay into a pot, but it's the emptiness inside that creates utility. The void is like that vessel. It's not about what's missing, but about the space that allows life to flow in its fullness. Imagine standing in a dense forest where trees grow so closely that sunlight barely reaches the ground. Similarly, your internal dialogue can become so thick with thoughts that it blocks the light of awareness. But as you begin to quiet the voice, you create space. The trees thin out, sunlight streams through, and suddenly you can see where you stand. This understanding doesn't mean the voice vanishes overnight. It's been part of your life so long that it feels like an old friend, even if it's more like a toxic one. The key isn't to fight the voice, but to stop feeding it. Every time you argue with it, analyze it, or try to control it, you're giving it energy. Instead, try this. Listen to the voice as you would to a distant radio. It's there, but you don't need to focus on it. You can hear its opinions, fears, and endless critiques. then let them fade like static into silence. In the biblical narrative, Elijah searches for God, expecting to find the divine in a mighty wind, an earthquake, or a fire. Instead, God appears in a still, small voice. What if that voice isn't a sound at all, but the profound stillness beneath all noise? This stillness isn't passive, it's alive, vibrant, and deeply intelligent. It's the source of intuition, creativity, and wisdom, the qualities that get drowned out by the voice's relentless monologue. When you touch this stillness, you begin to experience life differently. You stop reacting to every thought as if it's gospel truth. Imagine walking through a bustling marketplace. The voice might complain about the noise, judge the crowds, worry about appearances. Before you know it, you're tense and disconnected from the moment. Now imagine the same market, but this time, you're observing the voice without engaging it. You hear its complaints about the noise, but instead of agreeing or disagreeing, you simply notice. You see the faces around you, hear the laughter, smell the spices. The mental chatter becomes background noise, and the present moment comes alive. In this state, even chaos feels harmonious. This is why spiritual traditions emphasize practices like meditation, prayer, or mindful movement. These aren't just techniques to calm the mind. They're ways to step into the void, to recognize that the voice isn't the master of your existence. A Zen parable tells of a young monk who asked his master, "What is enlightenment?" The master replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The monk protested, "But doesn't everyone do that?" The master smiled and said, "No. Most people when hungry think of 1,000 things. When tired, they resist sleep with endless worry. Enlightenment is to simply be. This is where the transformation deepens. When you stop identifying with the voice, something miraculous happens. The fear it generates begins to dissolve. Fear can't survive without constant storytelling. It needs the voice to say, "This might happen. That could go wrong. You're not ready." But in the void, there's no room for these stories. There's only now, and now is always safe. Consider a bird perched on a branch. It doesn't worry whether the branch will hold. It simply rests, trusting its ability to fly if the branch gives way. Similarly, the void teaches you to trust not in life's guarantees, but in your capacity to respond to whatever arises. This trust is the essence of surrender, a concept mystics and sages have long discussed. Surrender isn't about giving up. It's about giving in to life's flow, to the stillness within, to the truth that you are more than the voice in your head. When you touch this truth, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The world doesn't feel as heavy. Situations that once triggered you lose their grip. You find yourself laughing at the absurdity of the voice's dramatics. In its place, you feel a quiet joy, an ease that was always there, hidden beneath the noise. The transformation isn't a single moment. It's a journey into the void, where the voice loses its hold, and you rediscover life's fullness. The deeper you go, the more you'll see that the void isn't empty at all. It's the mirror of stillness, reflecting who you truly are. The heart. Have you ever sat in a crowded room yet felt completely alone? It's not the absence of others that creates loneliness, but the relentless voice in your head that keeps you isolated from the present moment. That voice convinces you something is missing, that you need to be different, that others don't truly see you. It wraps you in a web of thoughts, cutting you off from the deep connection you crave, not just with others, but with yourself. Beyond this noise lies something vast, sacred, and profoundly human: the heart. The heart doesn't speak in words. It doesn't argue, judge, or create elaborate stories. Its language is simpler and quieter, a pull toward connection, a warmth that flows when you're fully present. But to hear the heart, you must first quiet the mind. In Hindu philosophy, this is the essence of Atman, the soul's connection to the universe. The sages teach that the heart isn't just a physical organ, but a spiritual center, the seat of true awareness. While the mind chatters endlessly, the heart remains steady, a silent witness to life's ebb and flow. When you stop identifying with the voice in your head, you begin to hear the heart's whisper. And this whisper holds a truth that no thought can touch. You are already enough. This realization can feel startling at first. After all, the voice thrives on convincing you otherwise. It tells you your worth depends on achievements, relationships, and meeting the world's expectations. But when you listen to the heart, you see through this illusion. Consider the biblical parable of the prodigal son. A young man who demands his inheritance, leaves home, and squanders everything. Ashamed and broken, he returns expecting rejection. Instead, his father welcomes him with open arms, celebrating his return. The story isn't just about forgiveness. It's about remembering your inherent worth. No matter how far you've strayed from yourself, the heart always waits ready to welcome you home. To return to the heart, you don't need to battle the voice in your head. Fighting only strengthens its grip. Instead, you learn to disarm it by shifting your attention. Imagine sitting by a campfire. The flames dance hypnotically, demanding attention. But beyond the fire lies a vast night sky filled with stars. The fire represents your thoughts, compelling but limited. The stars are your heart, infinite and boundless. When you focus on the fire, the stars seem to fade. But lift your gaze and the fire's pull diminishes as the sky's vastness emerges. The same is true of the heart. It's always there waiting for you to look beyond the noise. One pathway to the heart is through gratitude, not the superficial, I should be grateful kind, but the deep appreciation that arises when you pause to feel life's miracle. The breath in your lungs, sunlight's warmth, birdsong in the morning. Gratitude isn't something you think about, it's something you feel. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "Wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life." Gratitude quiets the voice because it pulls you into the present moment where the heart dwells. Another gateway is compassion, beginning with yourself. When the voice criticizes, judges, or tries to convince you of your unworthiness, respond with kindness. Imagine comforting a frightened child. Would you scold them for their fear or hold them gently and say it's okay? When you treat yourself with this same gentleness, the voice loses its power. You stop believing its harsh judgments and start seeing yourself as the heart sees you, whole, worthy of love, deeply human. This compassion naturally extends to others. When you're no longer trapped in mental stories, you see people more clearly, their struggles, their joys, their humanity. You feel a natural urge to connect not from need, but from abundance. In Buddhism, this is known as metta, or loving kindness, radiating love toward yourself, those you cherish, and even those who challenge you. The voice might resist, whispering, "They don't deserve kindness," or "You'll just get hurt." But the heart knows better. It knows that love isn't something you give or withhold based on conditions. It's who you are. As you rest more in the heart, something extraordinary happens. The world feels lighter. The burdens you once carried, fear, doubt, the need for control, start to fall away. You laugh more easily, breathe more deeply, find joy in simple moments. This shift doesn't mean life becomes perfect. Challenges will arise and the voice will try to pull you back into its stories. But now you have a choice. You can listen to the voice or return to the heart. Returning to the heart isn't a one-time event. It's a practice, a dance. Some days, the voice will be loud and the heart will feel distant. Other days, the heart will shine so brightly that the voice seems to vanish. The key is to keep choosing the heart again and again. As you do, you'll discover something profound. The heart isn't separate from the stillness you've been seeking. It is the stillness. It's where the voice falls silent and life's fullness rushes in. It's where transformation becomes not just a moment, but a way of being. This is the heart's invitation, to live beyond the noise, to rest in the truth of who you are, and to let life flow through you with ease and grace. Living the shift. The moment you stop talking to yourself isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning. You've glimpsed the stillness beneath the noise, felt the heart's vastness, and realized you're more than the voice in your head. But now comes the real question. How do you live this shift? Living the shift isn't about perfection. It's not about silencing the voice forever or never feeling fear or doubt again. The voice will return as persistent as ever, whispering its familiar tales of inadequacy, fear, and separation. But the difference is that now you see it for what it is, a shadow, not your true self. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises Arjuna, perform your duty with equanimity, abandon attachment to success and failure. This wisdom isn't about detachment from life, but about living with clarity. When you stop attaching your identity to the voice in your head, you free yourself to live fully, without fear of failure or need for constant validation. You begin to understand that life isn't about controlling every outcome. Instead, it's about showing up in the present moment, trusting the flow and responding from inner peace. One powerful way to live the shift is through mindfulness, not just as a practice, but as a way of life. It's the art of being fully here, fully now. When you're mindful, you don't get lost in thoughts about past or future. You engage with what's right in front of you, all your senses, all your attention, all your heart. Imagine drinking tea. The voice might rush you through it, thinking about your to-do list or replaying earlier conversations. But in mindfulness, you feel the cup's warmth, taste subtle flavors, smell the aroma, hear liquid pouring. A simple act becomes profound. Another way to live the shift is through service. When you're not consumed by mental chatter, you create space to truly see others, their needs, struggles, humanity. Kindness flows naturally, not because you're trying to be good, but because the stillness within recognizes itself in others. As St. Francis said, it is in giving that we receive. When you serve others, you feel life's interconnectedness. You realize the barriers your mind created. Stories of separation, competition, scarcity were never real. Living the shift also means embracing life's mystery. The voice craves certainty. It wants to know why things happen where they're leading, what comes next. But the heart thrives in the unknown. Mystics across traditions speak of surrendering to mystery. Rumi wrote, "Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. And do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come?" When you live the shift, you stop clinging to old narratives and allow life to unfold. This doesn't mean you stop planning or setting goals, but you hold them lightly. You trust that even when life takes unexpected turns, it's guiding you toward growth, healing, and deeper connection. As you navigate this new way of being, you may encounter doubt. The voice might say, "This is too hard. You're fooling yourself. Go back to how things were." But these moments aren't setbacks, they're opportunities. Each time you notice the voice and choose not to engage, you strengthen your connection to the stillness within. The great Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki said, "You are perfect just as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This paradox captures living the shift. You don't need fixing, because at your core, you're already whole. But as you grow in awareness, you naturally align more with your truth. One day you'll look back and realize the shift didn't happen all at once. It unfolded moment by moment, choice by choice. Each time you stepped out of the voice's stories and into presence, you moved closer to freedom. Not freedom from life's challenges, but freedom within them. When the voice no longer controls you, challenges become opportunities to grow. Fear becomes a doorway to courage. Loss becomes a teacher of love. This is the shift's paradox. By letting go of the voice, you connect more deeply with life. You're no longer watching from behind thought's veil. You're fully engaged, fully alive. Remember, the shift isn't something you achieve. It's something you embody. It's a way of being, seeing, living. It's realizing you're not the voice, but the stillness, the heart, the presence beyond it. In that realization, you discover the truth that was always there. You are the shift. You are the stillness. You are the light breaking through the noise. When you stop talking to yourself, transformation happens. And when transformation happens, life becomes a mirror reflecting the beauty, peace, and love that you've always been.